Can you hear the noise outside?
No.
Good.
No. And there's noise happening here too, you know, neighbors or my screaming kids or whatever. And as far as I know, I don't think you can hear that either, right?
No.
Yeah. Good. Well, this is the very first, it may be the last, I don't know, of a series of podcasts that we will do.
Don't even consider that change.
I'm a realist. What can I tell you? Things happen the way they do.
It's the first test. You cannot say it's the last one. Maybe the second, or you can start thinking about it.
Yeah. Realism is the gateway to my positivism, right? If I want to be positive, I have to be realist first. At any rate, it's the first one, and that we're going to do for Speaking Tall. And I have Iliana Rivas with me right now. Iliana is somebody who I work with on a regular basis, and we're going to talk today in and out and however it goes. Everything that we talk about on the podcast that we do is aimed towards the learner. And there are many things that you can go that get into teaching and how to do the best teaching practices and do all of these things. We're going to forget about that in a way. Not to say that it will never come up, but we're going to forget about that in a way and hopefully just talk about things that that a learner can watch and a learner can soak up and a learner can say, okay, those are some perspectives that, well, perhaps I've never thought of before. And we'll talk about things, you know, the teaching dimension and the learning dimension, they're always kind of overlap. So we'll see how it goes. But Iliana, you mentioned to me that you would like to talk about between using grammar and using skills-based. Just as an introduction, share just the initial thoughts about that.
Well, I think based on what I've observed while going into teachers' classrooms and doing some training for teachers and all those kind of things, I've noticed that most of the teachers have been focused on teaching grammar. Mm-hmm. But basically, what students are in need of is to learn how to deal with what they already know. So they already have some language, they already understand some things, but they really want to put it into action and to move from knowing all this bunch of grammar to how much I can do with what I already know. It's like a huge cliff between the two parts. I think students really need to have the ability to express themselves, to put everything that they already know, because I'm not only saying that the only thing that everything they know is only from English class, but they have learned how to do other things and and they have developed other skills through other subjects and through life experiences. So it's not only to focus on grammar and that will be the only way they will be able to use a language, but to actually ensure that all of their experiences and all of their knowledge acquired to the point they are in right now can help them. They are very valuable tools to help them develop their language skills.
Okay.
Not only content and content and content, because then we will be making memorize. How can I say it? Memorizing creatures. And we don't want them to be memorizing creatures. We really want them to do something with what they know. That's where real language learning happens, when they change the way they behave.
Okay, good. How old were you when you learned English?
I was, let me remember, I was in 5th grade. So it's kind of like when I was like, what, 9?
Okay.
Probably. And my mom took me to some private classes with some teacher that was really focused in grammar and memorizing vocabulary and all that.
Yeah.
And I kind of hated it. So I told my mom that I had decided to stop going. I prefer not to go because it was kind of frustrating to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you learned any other languages? Well, like just is it just English, or are there other languages that you've studied? Or I know Arabic, that for a little while you studied Arabic. Yeah. But
Well, it was a very short while.
yeah. Yeah.
Let me tell you the continuation of the story. So then, when I stopped going to the private schools, we moved to the U.S. and I was there for 3 years. So there's where I studied sixth grade, seventh, and eighth grade, and then we came back. So that's basically how I picked it up. I acquired the language. I was exposed to it, and
Yeah.
I didn't have a teacher there telling me, "Oh, this is a verb and this is a grammar." No, I just learned it because the environment.
Yeah.
I was totally surrounded by it. So after those 3 years, I came back, and I was like 15. So by the time I was around 19, I started to learn French.
Okay.
Took some French lessons. Unfortunately, because I was already working in that time, I had some scheduling issues, so I had to stop my classes. And um, I just finished level one 2 times. Okay.
Okay.
So it's like super little that I know about French, but it was a different, radically different experience than the one I had with English, because here I had a teacher and I had to learn phrases. He was not like, okay, learn all of these words and we'll have the exam. No, what he did was that he gave me fixed phrases, sentences, and complete messages. And then from the complete messages, he broke it down into the little particles so that we could understand how it worked. So it was a different way of presenting the language. The first one was the grammar. The second was the acquisition because of the environment where I was surrounded. And the third one was going from the big thing to the little thing. Okay.
Okay.
So and then I stopped thinking about learning any other language for several years. And when I was 30 something, I decided to start. I had a friend in Facebook who is Arab. I have a friend, sorry. And I became very interested in learning more about Arabic so that we could communicate in different ways. But it was very stressful, and I decided to quit because um, it's like learning 4 or 5 languages in one.
Yeah.
And besides, it doesn't have the same alphabet that the one that I have. I had to learn a lot of symbols, and the demand of the work of time and responsibilities in my life did not allow me to have that much time to invest in continuing with the Arabic.
Yeah.
I even have some books about Hindi, but forget it. I don't want to go into that anymore. Not
Yeah.
yet, or not in this moment. Who knows later?
Well, it's interesting because everybody has a different path to get to a second language if they start learning it, and in that path are a myriad of factors that belong only to that one person, and it's hard to compare your experience with someone else's experience. Um, it's hard to plug everything about yourself and the way you learn into someone else's methodology of teaching. Um, yeah, and everybody has a different experience. I in my master's, I'm doing something on trying to explore tools that will help adults learn a second language for the first time, which is very different than, say, children, you know. Um, and you can even separate it out and say, you know, a child that starts at the age of 9 is a very different experience than a child that starts from the age of 2 or 3, of course. Um, and then
And the
adults,
context,
I'm sorry?
and their context change, because
Yeah,
maybe you could have two students that are the same age
yeah,
and studying the same level, academic level,
yeah,
but they have different experiences. Maybe one is more accustomed to using media or social networks in English, or has more contact with people who speak the language
yeah.
than the other one, and
Yeah, I mean,
totally
it's,
different thing.
it's very different. Um, I would argue that that for adults, grammar can be a lot more useful tool than it would be for a child. Um, I remember studying English grammar as a child, probably about the same in the 5th grade or whatever, third, fourth grade, studying English grammar, and it was, I would not say dramatic, but it was it was not enjoyable. I remember not understanding what the point of it was, especially, you know, a grammar in my own language. And if I were to learn a second language at that point in time, forced into grammar, or you know, I would just be lost. Um, the and adults are very different as well. You might have adults that go into something feeling like, well, I'm going to take a class. I saw an advertisement that said, you know, if you come with us, you can be fluent in 6 months, and so I'm going to take the class and see what happens.
They might have a magic wand. That's their
Yeah,
way.
you know. And then you'll have other adults that perhaps have a completely different mindset when they go into it. Uh, Not necessarily the correct mindset, not necessarily the most healthy mindset, but a completely different mindset that says, you know, I'm just going to go to the bookstore and get some books, and in a couple of months, I'm going to learn this language. You know, um, why, you know, would that work? Would it not work? It depends on what the person puts into it. So, um, with, you know, in adult classes, it's always a kind of a crapshoot if you have a group, what's going to work best with them if they're at a very beginner level and they know absolutely nothing about the language. I've always felt that trying to make them, or trying to push them towards being proactive about their own learning, um, will be helpful for them and beneficial. If I say proactive, I mean um, they themselves taking control of their own learning, putting themselves in the driver's seat anyway of their own learning, and asking themselves, what's going to help me understand this? Again, that's different for everyone. I think if an adult takes a proactive position towards learning a language, I think the grammar can be very helpful for them, but they've got to explore the grammar on their own terms and figure out their own particular questions that they want to ask somebody that can help them make sense of it. What do
No,
you,
no. Sorry, Shane. I'm sorry. Now that you're mentioning that, it just pops in my mind. There are like, I think we could consider four different factors, or I don't know if we can actually call them factors, but 4 points. When you think about a child or a young learner learning a second language, one of the most difficult things that I've seen teachers struggle with is to get them motivated into learning and to continue with the motivation level to the point they finally raise it. But they have this beautiful ability to and flexibility to learn. When you take a look at an adult learner, then you realize that their high, the levels of motivation are always high because they're doing it because they really want to do it. So you don't struggle with that part as much as you do with a kid, to a point. Okay.
Yeah.
But the flexibility of the learning process in their minds, it's more complex and more how can I say it, well, yeah, it's not as flexible as it is for a child. So they are like four different things that just go like that. They twist as they grow, and the adults do have the motivation to learn, but the problem is that they don't think they can actually do it. So that
That's,
belief,
that's some adults, but there are other adults that have a completely different mindset and absolutely are perplexed the moment that they don't understand something because they were completely in the opposite mindset of, I can do this, I can do it very easily. And yet when they run into a problem, they're very perplexed by that. Why do I not understand it?
I think it all depends on the type of activities they carry out, or their profile, no? Because I take the example of my mother. My mother, well, while we were in the States, she wanted to learn English because she wanted to communicate fluently. But my brother and I were always bullying her around because of her pronunciation and all of that. So she ended up hating English. So
Yeah,
she stopped. And I'm talking that, I mean, I'm saying that this happened like what, 30 something years ago?
yeah.
Now she's learning right now. But she decided to learn. She said, no, I'm going to try it. And it's going to be difficult. Probably yes, probably not, but I'm going to try it. So she's finding tools. She's got this Rosetta Stone thing going on. And then she's all addicted to Duolingo. And she tries to watch some programs with subtitles to see how much she can understand. But she's got the motivation. But then the point that I want to make is that sometimes an adult can jump from one point to another regarding on how capable, or yeah, how capable am I of accomplishing this. And the point that I want to say is that many of the things have, or maybe all of the things that take a person to have that way of thinking is something related to emotional things.
Yeah, it can be. I mean, everybody has different experiences. And I remember too, when I started learning Spanish, and I started learning Spanish as an adult. I was 27 when I started learning Spanish. Uh,
Last year. I'm just kidding.
I'm sorry.
Last year.
Yeah, last last decade or the one before.
Okay, don't go on in the countdown.
The but I started learning at that time, and I was at the well, I don't know if it has anything to do with the point in life that I was at. I just had this I just had this belief, this naive belief, that in a couple of months I could learn Spanish. If I ever sat down to just try to learn another language, uh, I could learn it in a couple of months. Now, you know, I don't know why I believe that, and it never was true. I didn't learn Spanish in a couple of months, but I had this idea that I would, um, and it wasn't because I thought that that's what everybody else did. Um, I just had this idea that no, but I have a good brain. I can think it through.
You were confident on your skills.
Yeah, and of course, it did not take 2 months. But I think the attitude, naive as it was, I think it was helpful going in. Um, I was never, I was never concerned about people laughing at me because I didn't say it with a good accent or say it like a native does. Mm, one of the reasons was is because I was in the U.S. and if I was practicing with Mexicans, a lot of times the Mexicans did not speak English at all. If they did speak English, it wasn't with the perfect accent either. And so, I didn't have anything to feel embarrassed about. If I'm in my country and I'm trying to speak your language and you want to laugh at me about it, but you haven't lifted a finger to learn, the language of the country that you're in, you know, who should be laughing, but the, so I didn't have that issue. And even today, when I speak Spanish, of course, I don't have I don't speak Spanish like a native might. I might be a lot closer if I didn't spend uh, 12 years, 13, 14 years already spending all day long teaching English while I was here. Um,
But you're able to communicate, and I mean,
I'm not, yeah, and I'm not criticizing myself for anything. I guess there's a moment for that if I want to do it, but at this moment, I'm not doing that. The point is that everybody is concerned about, um, well,
doing it right.
I'll never do it like a native, and really, is that the point? Um, it's not really the point. Funny, in the United States, a lot of people like a certain accent when people talk. They think, in many cases, it's kind of exotic to hear somebody's accent when they speak English. It doesn't sound like a native. But at any rate, I didn't have that problem. Um, but I was very aggressive. I understood somehow intuitively that you had to have a desire to do it, but if you had a necessity also, and you could put those two together and create some sort of a momentum with the two, that you could push yourself and uh, and spend your free time investing in continuing to further that. Uh, if you don't have one of those two, a necessity, you have a desire but not much necessity, or you have a necessity but not much desire, um, whatever free time you have, you will spend it somewhere else and not doing that thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you have those two together and you can tie those two together and create kind of a momentum with them, then it's, you know, while on one hand, it's fun to stay up all night playing a video game, trying to get to level 13 of the video game. In this case, you will literally stay up all night trying to figure out how to explain an idea of yours to somebody because you want that person to, you know, you want to build a certain relationship with that person. Um, you want to have a communicative relationship with this person, and you want that person to take you seriously, that, that you're trying to learn this or that. But that comes through having a desire and a necessity to do it. And a lot of times, people who have a desire, they don't necessarily have the necessity. So you kind of have to create um, fake necessities. Fake necessity is meaning that if I, as long as I'm outside of this circle, I don't have the need to. But if I choose to step inside of this circle, suddenly I'm going to feel that need. So if there are people at my work, for example, and I just do not engage with them, then there's no need, to go home and figure out how to explain what I was trying to say to that person yesterday. But if you step into the circle and you try to engage them, then suddenly you can acquire this need, this sense of need to show this person that you're not an idiot. That I can speak to you or say something to you. Now, there might be other psychological factors behind that are more embarrassing to talk about. I don't know. But you just create a fake need that says, tomorrow when I see that person, I'm not going to be a complete idiot like I was today.
It's a way to push yourself to do it, to justify why you need to do it or why you decided to do it.
Does that apply to any learner? Could you suggest that to any learner and hope that it has some sort of relevance or applicability to, whatever the reality is for that person. Is it useful? Is it useful information for a learner to consider those things? I don't know. I have to say that it's less useful. I have to say it's more useful than not hearing any perspective at all.
I'm thinking about it because I think it depends on many things and the profile of the learner and the it's because when you're teaching kids, sometimes they don't need a reason to do it if they are really motivated. If they really enjoy what they do in the class, you don't need to have them consider this kind of things.
Yeah.
But some students are like, I have to take it because there's no other choice. It's just something I have to do.
Yeah.
And that's precisely when this point that you're making is really important because it's kind of it's a strong tool to make them conscious of how much benefit they can get out of it. Maybe by understanding it, they could feel that they really need to do it, and they could it with their will to do it.
Yeah.
But then I'm thinking about adults, and then I see some that are really conscious about the reasons why they need to do it, all of the benefits they can get out, but they still don't want to do it. It's like going back to the children who do it just because they have to do it in class. They hate it, but then that to transform or to help them change that mindset, it's I think a big challenge for a teacher to work with in the classroom because they have this idea that I have to do it, but I don't enjoy doing it, and I would really like to see and do some deeper research on what makes a student, regardless of the age and the context, what makes a student feel like they have to do it, and even if they understand that it is important, they feel it like if they're carrying this huge big bag of potatoes on their back and they enjoy it because they are like, there's no other choice. But I'm doing it not because I want to, because I have to.
Yeah.
So I think I'm working on finding a way on how to find that little thing that makes them switch that perspective to I really enjoy it, now I like it.
Yeah.
Is there a teaching strategy? Is there a point about the environment or their learning environment? Is it about finding out that whatever they're doing, it's giving them results that they were expecting, maybe not even expecting?
Yeah.
About self-confidence. I don't know. I think there's a lot of points that are involved in this, but I don't know. You tell me, what do you think about what I'm saying?
Well, it's hard for adults, for example. My first thing I would tell an adult is find a point of focus that's beyond the language, a point of focus that you want to achieve, but that requires the use of the language to achieve it. Usually, it would be something that involves a proper communication to achieve, but a communication in that language that you're trying to learn. Um, and again, it comes into, yes, there will be that desire to either learn the language or to show that you can learn it, show that you can use it. I think those are two different things. One is a desire to learn it simply for knowing it, and then there's this desire that's a little bit apart from the language itself, which is showing that you have it up here to be able to learn how to do it. Those are kind of different things, but
It's like what you're saying is like bringing the grammar and the vocabulary and everything to actually practice, no?
not necessarily. It's I mean, maybe the grammar and vocabulary are a part of that mix, but you have this motivation because you've put yourself in a situation where your focus is X. And a part of achieving that X is one, learning the language, yes, but two, showing whatever is in this X, not only that you can say words in that language, but that you have the capacity to put things together and actually be able to communicate. A lot of times people in their own language, their native language, are not able to communicate. They don't have the communication skills to express a thought or show that their brain is working at the time that the communication is taking place. And things in my throat, sorry.
You carry on getting that settled while my hamster keeps running.
Yeah, a lot of times I fall into that situation where somebody throws a question at me that I haven't processed well enough in my mind to be able to give a good answer for in the instant that the answer is expected. Uh, a lot of times it takes practice. A lot of times it's like, oh, well, I've talked about this like 30 times, so I have an answer. Boom, just like that. Other times you get a question out of nowhere and your mind is elsewhere, and you don't know exactly how to answer the question, and you don't feel like an idiot because you don't know, but you feel like an idiot because you're not able to communicate to the standard that your ability to reason suggests that you should be able to. That's in your native language.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times we have to practice with that just to show that we're capable of communicating. And so a lot of times with the second language, especially with adults, you're wanting to achieve that, at least to the degree that the person listening to you says, okay, yes, it's not the person's first language. I'll give them a little bit of slack, but I can see that the person does know what they're talking about. And to get to that, to be a person that can show that you know what you're talking about, then you want to look at little structural things that says, when I say this to this person, when I express this idea, I want that person to understand me just like I'm intending to be understood. I do not want them to understand X when I'm actually trying to say Y. And so those motivational factors come in when a person is invested in achieving a certain thing that is not the language itself,
Mm-hmm.
but that requires the language in order to achieve it. And that's kind of going back to the desire necessity thing. There's a desire there, and there's a necessity, and they're kind of kind of work together to build a momentum, to aggressively looking for the things that you need to find to say what you want to say. And again, how many adults are in a situation where they can actually find that X to focus on? It's very, for example, a single adult who has complete control over their time and their schedule and can do whatever they want at the moment they decide to do it, has a lot more leeway here than, say, an adult who has a relationship with a girlfriend or boyfriend or a wife or a husband or has kids, because they don't have the freedom to just say, I'm going to get up and I'm going to go to this place today and I'm going to be there all day long and I'm going to do this.
It's more challenging.
Well, nothing is impossible in any sort of situation, but every situation is different and distinct. And what might work easily for one adult doesn't work so easily for another, and vice versa. So, so the adult in the situation that they're in, yes, they have to kind of take an inventory of everything and ask, where can I find, where can I find or create this space where I can make this desire and this necessity work together, and that's, that's before you even get into the language, but yeah.
And that has to do with the skills. Not going back to the first question, finding the necessity is more connected to the skills than to the grammar part. So
yeah,
sometimes you can find students that have super good grammar, but they don't have the communication skills, as you were saying. So their language is very well structured and everything, but they don't flow. And there's the other way, that they might not have all this very well structured language, but they manage themselves through communicating what they really want and to make the point that they want to make.
Yeah, everybody has to find that, on their own. I've even talked to students who said my most successful advances that I made with English was having to communicate my way through the games that I play with online communities. And again, that's one of those X to focus on. When you start playing that game, your focus is not to learn a language. It might be a sub-focus. It might be something you thought, well, I can play this game because it's fun, and also it's going to help me learn the language that I want to learn too. That could be a motivation. But, without the game element, are you going to jump into that? So some people wanting, to get to that next level or wanting to achieve something in this game, well, they have to employ whatever skills they can in order to reach that point, and they pick up things along that way. So yes, I by my own experience, which is just, one little star in the galaxy, but by my own experience, I tell people that yes, if you want to learn fast, it's a combination of grammar and skills based. But when I say grammar, I don't mean you sitting in a class and waiting for grammar to come to you. I mean you going out, buying the grammar puzzle, spreading all the pieces out on the table and start to put it together. And when you go to a class, if you do go to a class, have that teacher help you say, look, I've got these pieces together, but I'm still not seeing the connection. Can you help me there? In that kind of a grammar class is very helpful because the student goes in wanting to know, this or that. Can you help me figure it out? And the skills-based, I've always felt like, is something that you do outside of class. Again, I'm telling about my experience as just one little tiny invisible star in the galaxy. But the skills-based was, let me take care of the skills base outside of the class. But when I come to class, I want you to answer me questions about things that, little holes and bumps that I ran into out there in the real world of trying to use the skills. I always thought of the class as kind of like a pit stop when you're doing NASCAR or something like that. And you're doing the laps, doing the laps, doing the laps. You come in for a pit stop, you got to change the tires, you got to do this, you got to check, whatever you got to check and blah, blah, blah. To me, that's like a class, right? I go into a class because I need to get this stuff done and I can't do this myself. I'm the driver, right? I'm the driver. I get back out on the right. I don't need anybody sitting next to me in the car telling me to turn left or turn right or do everything. Let me take care of that.
Mm-hmm.
Me, in my world, that's my skills based. When I come to a classroom,
That's a beautiful example about autonomous learners.
yeah, and again, some learners are autonomous. My question is it, and that's kind of a different topic than grammar versus skills based, but is it possible, is it even useful to look for ways to push students to be more autonomous? If you see that they're in a place and you cannot be inside of their head, you can take little cues from the outside and say, this person is in a place where it seems like they haven't discovered this or this about learning a language because it's their first time, and why would they have discovered this? Is it what would be the word I want to use? Is it feasible to attempt to try to nudge them in an autonomous direction? I don't know. I know things that work for me, and I think all of us, if we're in a teaching position, are silly not to employ those in sharing those with other students. If something worked for me and I don't share that with other people, then what the hell is that? Why would I keep that to myself? Though at the same time, you realize everybody's situation is different. So, and tell me what you think about this, because when we talk about skills-based, I've seen a lot of skills-based classes that seem to kind of have been grammarized as well. When I say grammarized, I don't mean that they're teaching grammar. I mean that skills have been chopped up and categorized into grammar-like explanations. And it's in order to create a skills-based class, it's kind of bringing back all the things that made the grammar class so undesirable in the first place. I don't know.
So it's for like example, kind of a fake skills based? Well, is that what you're saying?
No, but in order to make it like a class that has a structure to it, that students can leave and say, yeah, I think that teacher knows what they're doing. And you have, like, say, a textbook, for example, and the textbook wants to concentrate on, an introductory paragraph and a body paragraph and a conclusion, and making T-charts about how to make notes and things of that nature, and kind of like books that we've seen that we're familiar with, right? To me, all of that seems like grammarization.
Because of the logic and the order it follows, because of the structure. Is that why you say it's grammarized?
Yeah. And again, I'm not a person who's opposed to grammar. Okay, but I realized that when we did grammar classes in the past, the thing that made them so undesirable was the concentration on this way, this way, this way, this way, right? That's what made it so undesirable. This whole kind of, this policy or, religious kind of thing of like, this has to be done this way and this way and this way.
When in reality, Shane, when we go to real life context, when we really go out where native speakers use a language, sometimes native speakers don't follow that super stiffy order that we teach them in the classrooms, or that they
That's
are
right. That's right. And you've heard that expression, throw the baby out with the bathwater.
no.
Well, it's a, it's an idiom, it's a modismo. But throw the baby out with the bathwater. You have when you're bathing a baby, the bathwater gets dirty, and you know, the bathwater becomes undesirable, and you throw out the bathwater. But when you throw the baby out with the bathwater, it kind of defeats the purpose of what you were trying to do. Um, the with the grammar approach to classrooms, uh, we wanted to. Grammar was no longer desirable. Nobody liked grammar. Everybody, you know, and you can understand. You can understand because if grammar is like, no, you have to do it this way and this way and this way.
It's like mathematics.
Yeah, yeah. And again, it's like puzzle pieces being thrown at you. It's not you sitting down, getting the puzzle out and figuring it out. No, you go somewhere and people throw puzzle pieces at you. It's not nice. I get that. But the the way that we've gone from grammar to skills based has been kind of like throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Like,
And in many ways, we just simply brought back the bathwater and let the baby out. So yeah, I can see in your face that maybe I'm not moving again.
I'm trying to bring it down to a form to explain that in Spanish.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what the Spanish word would be.
Yeah, I don't think there's such thing as a phrase for that, but I get your point.
Yeah. I mean, skills based is fine in a classroom, but if you get into the grammarization of it again, that thing that made grammar so ugly to begin with, if you're bringing that back with the skills based, then it just poisons everything. So
It's like it's like when you say, like in Star Wars, no, you've become what you've always. How does it go? You become what you swear to destroy, or something like that. So at the end, the skills base, it kind of turns into a grammar thing, when there were like two different things, two opposites. So at the end, they ended up merging because of the order and the structure that has been put into the skills. I think that's what you're saying, Shane.
yeah, I mean, you'll have students and you give them an assignment and that says, well, we're not going to worry about grammar, but you have to have your introductory paragraph and your thesis statement, and you have to have your two body paragraphs and your concluding statement, and we're still looking for those things based on should I give them points because they didn't include this or they
With
didn't.
a different name.
Yeah, yeah. um, and again, it's not to say that those things are not important. If you go back to the grammar, you cannot say that those grammar things are not important either. But the way that they end up having to be taught in a class, um, for them to be useful in a classroom setting, there has to be elements about them that are teachable, and how they get taught you know is different in a situation where you're not in a university setting and you have to have points and you have to be able to show that I did this, this, and this to pass the class. That's a lot what university is. It's not so much about how good are you or how gifted are you at this. University degree just shows that, hey, I took 6 semesters where I sat in front of teachers who told me to do this, 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 and this, which I was able to do. And so I graduated. So now, company, that I can do these things. I'm capable, right? That's what university is looking for out of people. If you take a class outside of university setting, you might find something completely different with fewer barriers on this or that, where people can explore and be freer to do things. But I would tell the learner that if you want to take a class, go for it. There are many things that you can learn, and you have ultimate freedom to learn exactly how you want to learn, not taking a class at all. And when you do pay people to help you with your learning, that you are in control of that, and that they are answering questions that you bring to the table, rather than the opposite way where you just sit and try to grapple with things that they throw at you. Because, you know, I don't know. What do you think?
I think it's something very complex to be landed in a few words and in a few concepts. There are many factors that exist that need to be considered and that are suitable for a particular type of learner. And as I've always told my students when they normally ask, who is the best teacher or which is the best school or what school is the one you recommend? I don't think there's such thing. I think it's the one that fits their needs. And depending on their level of what we were talking before, depending on the level of necessity they have or the type of necessity they have and their level of motivation, the variables are thousands, and we would always, as learners, we need to find the ones that are mostly appropriate to what we think or what we need or what we feel. There's no such like a right way to do things, and that's one thing that I've been thinking about a lot lately, um, because um, I've been thinking about it a lot because there are thousands of certifications and courses that tell teachers how to do things the right way, but there's no such thing as a right way, Shane. I
Well,
really
and not
think
for a learner either,
it all. Sorry.
and not for a learner either.
Yeah, that's why that's what I'm saying. The way that there's not a right way for a teacher to teach the class in the perfect way, because learners are all different and they all have their own ways. So there's no such thing in the world, in the universe, that it's the right way to do it or the only way to do it appropriately for the learners. It depends on your students, on what they need, on what they want, and flexibility has to be there all along for all of us and them.
Is there anything that you know that everybody's different? You know that everybody has different paths. You know that everyone is in different circumstances. Are there any universalities, or without having to go to that extreme, the things that generalities, if not a universality, generality that applies to learning in general? That you could say, look, regardless your situation, this particular aspect needs to be in order. If you're going to, and again, just like students are looking for anything, an adult student, an adult learner of a language will look for any tool that they can that will make sense to them. People will say, well, adults have a tendency to want to translate everything. Yeah, because they're an adult. That's the way that they think. Uh, you know, An adult trying to translate something is just a person who is going through the toolbox and looking for what works, what doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
It's not for me as a teacher to tell you, adult, it's a sin to translate. Don't do it. It's bad. It will kill you. It's not for me to tell an adult that. The adult is smart enough that they can figure out what works about translation for them and what doesn't. And let them go with that, because that's part of being an autonomous learner.
It
Try
works for
this.
them.
Does it work or not? You know? And they won't know until they get into a situation where, you know, where they get embarrassed about something because it didn't come out like they wanted it to. But that won't happen all the time. Sometimes it'll come out exactly like they wanted it to. If I see a document and it's written in both Spanish and English, and I know very little about one of those languages, I'll look at it for hours, like people might look at fish in a tank. You know, I'll look at it and see, you know, what corresponds to what. I don't need some teacher coming up, Eva, you know, that's not the way you need to learn. Go away. Let me do what I want to do.
Exactly, because we're independent. We're all different. That's what I'm saying. There's no such way. If some things, if certain aspects from a determined methodology or technique work for people, I'm saying for a learner in general, it's okay to use it,
Yeah,
because it depends on their way of learning and their way on their personality and in so many things.
yeah.
And it's not like, no, that's super old fashioned, don't learn that way because that's not the right way. And I think the best way is to have a combination of many different things, but giving them the table served, so they can take the way, they can choose whatever way they want to follow.
Um, I'll ask a lot of learners, you know, what's your strategy for learning? What activities do you like to do? He said, well, I like to watch Netflix in English, and I like to watch videos on YouTube, listen to songs. I like listening to songs and things like that. And you know, I, do I agree that they're going to learn quickly as that is their sole strategy? No, but I'm not going to tell them not to do it. You know, I said, you know, hey, if you've got those tools and you can do it and you like doing it, go for it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not communication, or at any rate, it's a one-way communication. You know, you're listening to other people communicate without processing it in terms of me, right, out there using it. And if you can get something like that, that'll be far more helpful for you than merely listening to songs or watching shows. But don't not do it. Of course, do it. You know, anything that you can use that's going to be helpful at some part of your brain, do it. You know, why not?
And maybe it might make sense in the moment or not. Maybe it will make sense later on.
It might
Even
make,
if it seems that it's not very helpful at the moment, you will find how it helped you later on.
yeah, yeah, at some point. I think if an adult is very aggressive about learning and really naively thinks that they can learn the language in 2 months, which they won't, but if you really want to try to hit that, then you really want to try to show yourself that you can, um, get out the grammar and look at it. The grammar is not an old nun with a ruler who's going to hit you on your hand if you do it wrong. It's a
Yeah,
map.
that's right.
It's a
I love
map. You go to a city you've never lived in before, you don't know how to get around, but you want to get around. You want to get around on your own volition. You want to rent a car and go from point A to point B in a city you don't know. You use a map, and that's what grammar is. It's a map. It's tomorrow I want to talk to this person and I want to tell him this. And, you know, if you don't know anything, if you don't have any sort of concept about how languages work, then you're not going to know what questions to ask to figure out how to say that. But and that's that's the tricky thing. When I at 27, when I started learning Spanish, I had no grammar at all at the 5th grade. But we close that out of our mind. It's we don't ever think about that again. I didn't remember what the difference between a noun and a pronoun was. I didn't remember what an adjective was. It didn't take long. All I had to do was see an example, and then all right, yeah. But there was this thing that was like, once you jump into it, it's like, all right, yeah, I'm smart enough to do it. And if it doesn't make sense to me, I'm actually angry about it. Call up that teacher. Next time you see that teacher, ask them what makes sense about this. Can't believe I don't know this. And but yeah, you would. Grammar is very helpful in that sense because it helps you to feel certain that when you say something, the other person will understand you like you want to be understood. And the rest will come when you listen to other people as well. So I don't know. That's my thoughts on grammar.
It is a compliment. Yeah, it's basically like a complement of the process, but it as I understand it, it shouldn't be the center of the process, but it's a complement.
Well, I wouldn't say it should be the
It's
center.
one with the other, exclusive.
Well, I mean,
Sorry, Shane, I didn't get that.
Without being out in the world and doing the skills part of it, then it really has little purpose outside of that. So if I'm not going out in the real world and trying to really engage people and trying to be in situations where I really want, where it's important for me that I'm respected as an equal in terms of being able to communicate on a certain level, then what purpose is the grammar going to do for me? No, very little. And in a classroom, it's going to be even less help. I would say for an adult, that the grammar is especially useful if you're the one in the driver's seat, if you're the one analyzing the pieces, and you're the one asking yourself, hey, if I want to say this in a way that this person understands that I'm talking about yesterday and not today and not all the time and not tomorrow and not maybe, then how do I clarify for that person that I'm talking about yesterday? Then, only in those situations does searching the grammar become very helpful and very useful.
Mm-hmm.
And help you to feel less lost. When you
it gives a sense of confidence. And how do you call that? Let me think. I don't even recall the word in Spanish. Hang on. Oh my God. It gives them a sense of certidumbre.
Yeah, which
I just can't think of the word in English for that one.
Well, the certainty. It gives them a sense of certainty.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry,
exactly.
I get lost in the two worlds of language, and it doesn't. Sometimes I don't realize that somebody's looking for the other word. But.
And then sometimes I know the word in English and I just can't find it in Spanish, and just I don't know. It's just a matter of. That's the reason why I normally tend to speak Spanglish.
Yeah, a lot of us do.
So yes, I think grammar gives themselves a sense of
certainty.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Well,
and that helps their motivation, and they feel that they are doing it right, and because it is a cultural issue.
Yeah.
People tend to be afraid, and I could include myself into that group of people, that sometimes we can feel very nervous about the judgment from other people sometimes, and
Yeah.
depending on what we're doing, and we don't want to do it wrong because we experienced bullying since elementary school, and I think it's kind of it's kind of a factor that gives a lot of strength to the use of grammar.
Well, it does give a sense of certainty, and at the same time, the whole thing about personal confidence and things of those are things that every individual has to find their own strategy to overcome, um, because you you're not going to find perfection. Um, I've had to give a lot of presentations in the maestria, in the master's program with with what I'm doing, and you have to give these presentations in Spanish, and you have to use a lot of academic language that that you may or may not have had some practice delivering and whatnot. And I have a tendency to explain things very slowly, kind of like Lopez Obrador slowly.
Oh no, come on, Shane.
And when I listen to other people speaking, it puts it almost makes me like mareado sometimes. Listening to other people speaking, it's like, just slow down, man. Slow down. You don't have to get so much into the
Does
five.
it happen because of the amount of information to process?
I no, I think I'm this way in English too, my own native language. Some people are just super fast talkers. That's how they are in their normal life, and they're able to speak very quickly and whatnot. And again, I have to find my own connections to make in my own mind to not be uh, to not feel mm, embarrassed by that. So I don't feel embarrassed, but you have to work the perspectives to look at everything in the big picture, not to be embarrassed by it, you know. And you tell yourself, how many people do a master's degree in a second language? Not many. Some people do,
No.
not many. So just cut yourself some slack, for crying out loud.
And it is a tough thing, Shane, because I am going over the masters as well, and sometimes it turns into a challenge for me on the writing part.
Yeah,
I I know exactly where I am in my second language, but in my first language, it's very difficult because of the different types of the different things that you consider in writing in Spanish. So yeah, you have to use a lot of synonyms, and then there's tons of synonyms, and it is a challenge for me, and it is my first language. So I totally the idea of how you feel with that.
yeah.
It is a big challenge.
No, and just the academic speaking itself, right? Regardless of the language you're using to do it, the academic speak, the constant having to cite somebody else to make a simple point that you want to make. Adding all of that into the mix, it's nerve wracking sometimes. But, when you do a master's degree paper and you have to say, well, as so and so says, the sun is very hot. Like, why do I have to include so and so in pointing out that the sun is hot? You know, I'm exaggerating, but it just feels like that when you do academic work. And again, that's something where it's very helpful to understand how the grammar works as well. But that's far beyond somebody who's just entering a language for the first time. I would, to an adult who really is proactive about learning a language, yeah, I would say grammar is important, but from the perspective that you're taking the driver's seat in the grammar, not going to a class and let somebody throw bits and pieces at you that you can't make sense out of. I don't know. That's what I would say.
Now that we're talking, I'm considering changing an app that I'm using. I don't know if you've heard of Tandem.
Yeah, I know that app. I wanted to make an app just like that one.
Oh, that would be cool.
And it was cool to discover Tandem because then it was like, this is proof that it works.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I downloaded the app, and I was like just playing around. I was just being silly when I downloaded it. So I said I was trying to learn Italian. Right now, I have a whole library of books waiting for me to read, and none of them Italian or has to do with any Italian thing. So now that we're talking and we're bringing the point of the real language used compared to academic language that we teach in our classrooms, I'm thinking about going back to it and then readjust it so that I can just keep on practicing more English, because it's been a long time since I've actually experienced being there for a long period of time, and I don't think I should actually start working in a different language, but to make mine more solid. Because now that I am talking to you, Shane, sometimes I eventually think that I might not be getting my ideas across as I wish, because I've been, I'm detecting a need now. I've been going around in circles on the same things, the same context, the same ideas, the same people, the same everything. I need to go out of the context to in order to see what else I am missing. And I'm going to go back to Tandem and then try to figure out where I am in that point. What point I am in.
Well, try it. Try it. Those things that are inside of our heads tell us a lot different things than what other people see on the outside. So I, I, when I think about your ability to speak English as a second language because you're Mexican, and yes, you lived in the States for 2 or 3 years, as you mentioned, but you've been here in Mexico the whole time. When I hear you speaking English and I think about it in that context, I'm pretty impressed that to me there doesn't seem to be much of an accent there. I think if I put this video to Ecky's friends in the States and said, look, I talked to a fellow teacher, um, and they don't even know that I live in Mexico, they probably wouldn't be certain that you were Mexican. Now that's my
Wow.
I'm not saying that to be nice or anything, but
I know, Shane.
Yeah. On the other hand, if you listen to my Spanish and we did this in Spanish, it would be very clear that I'm not a speaker.
I think it comes from the fact that I learned English when I was a teenager.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, all the literature says those little details about pronunciation and the little nuances and the the expressions and everything else that comes out at a young age, which wasn't me, right? So I can speak Spanish fluently, but it doesn't sound like I was born here. So that's the way it is. I can say that. It sounds like I live in a world of where people are constantly thinking down on themselves. So if I point that out, everybody responds to me as if I'm down on myself. It's just I'm a realist. You know, you just call
We
it like
should be proud of our accents.
I don't care one way one way
Yeah.
or the other. Yeah. I can't really truly care one way or the other. Um, uh,
That should be another question, Shane. How important are accents for people?
well, people have a lot of different opinions because I've watched other people's opinions on this, and you're thinking, But you know, I've always kind of, when somebody asks me the question, I've always said, hey, the accent is not an important thing. Your ability to communicate ideas is the important thing. Now I say that, you know, and then I listen people try to do conference calls with people from India, and then I'm thinking, no, accent might be more important than I'm thinking, you know, because they're speaking English very fluently, but I have no idea what they're saying at all. Yeah.
I know. Yeah, those, you know, Afro Americans are still a challenge for me.
The who?
Afro Americans,
Oh, okay.
they are always a challenge to me.
And there's a lot of diversity. There's a lot of diversity there too. I mean, just among because it's not. It has a lot more to do with where people live than I think than other than other factors um, such as the race. The race might play something into it because of, of cultural norms and pop culture and things of that nature and the way things develop over time and whatnot. But a lot of times it's just as much on where somebody lives, if you live in the South or if you live in the North, or you know, or the kind of community that you live in, wherever it is that you are, has a you know plays a big part as well.
When I was teaching Spanish in the certain in some course that I was taking to be certified as a Spanish teacher for as a foreign language Spanish teacher.
Yeah.
Um, I had a lot. I did it here in Guadalajara, so I had a lot of victims for my practice, and they were Indian. I had also some American, some German, and we had different nationalities, but the majority we got were from India. And as you were saying, it all depends on the region they are from or they come from. I noticed that the ones that have been here the longest, they were very easy for me to understand. And one time I decided to talk to one of them, like when we were closing the course and we were wrapping everything up, like we had the ceremony and stuff. And I approached him, and don't ask me about his name because it's super difficult to say.
Yeah.
And he said, I've understood, I've understood that once I came, when I first came from India, it was very difficult for other people who speak English to understand my English, just like you were saying. But then he started moderating his speaking, and he started speaking a little bit slower and making more emphasis on certain words. And he was very fluent, but he was super understandable.
Yeah.
And the ones that just come from India, oh my God, that was a pain.
Yeah.
That was super pain because you didn't actually notice if it was English or something else
Yeah.
because they speak super connected, and I don't know, it was a pretty tough thing. And
Yeah.
then their movement of their heads like this when they say yes,
Yeah.
it's like a shock in my head, like yes or no, and then they say yes. So
Yeah.
all of those things were funny, and but yeah, it's complicated, the factor of the accent
Yeah.
also.
And it's complicated, but it's sometimes uh, depending on how invested you are in knowing that person or whatever, it's fascinating to get into those little worlds as well and explore them and find out the little details there. If there are people that you're not interested in getting to know very well, then no, it's just completely, absolutely annoying. Yeah.